Good evening, Council. Welcome to this March meeting of the Council. The meeting will be webcast live, allowing people to view the meeting via the Council's website. We do not film the public gallery. Please switch off mobile phones. The press and any member of the public can film the meeting, make an audio recording, take photographs or blog and tweet during the meeting. Can I ask if anyone is intending to film the meeting? Thank you. You can only film the meeting. You are not allowed to film members of the public sitting in the public gallery, and please avoid causing any disruption to the meeting. And if any member of the public objects to being recorded, this is your opportunity to leave the meeting. We'll start first with the tributes to two former members. Since our last council meeting in January, we are saddened by the news of the passing of both Alderman Jeff Taylor and Councillor Bob Lloyd. First, I'd like to speak a little bit about Alderman Taylor, who I've known for many, many years. Jeff, as he was known to all of us, served on the council for two periods, 1974 to 84, and then again from 2000 to 2004, and he held many positions, including Cabinet Advisor for Education, Lifelong Learning, Youth and Cultural Services, and quite a number of others. He was also Chair of the Education Staffing Committee and Vice Chair of Oldbury Town Committee from May 2003 till June 2004. Jeff was supported by his wife Brenda as consort during the municipal year, and when Brenda served as Deputy Mayor to John Edwards, Councillor John Edwards. I would like to invite anyone from the Council to speak about Jeff in a few minutes. A week later, we received the very sad news that Bob Lloyd had also passed away. This sent a shock through all of us, as many of us had been, many of us had been with him only that evening. Bob was committed to the people of Wednesbury and Tipton and was known for his work within the voluntary sector within these areas, particularly health, housing, and highly successful Litter Watch team. I've known Bob Lloyd for many years through the various health committees. Councillor Lloyd was first elected to represent Wednesbury South Ward on the 22nd of May 2014 and became Cabinet Member for Inclusive Economic Growth in May of last year, of 2019, and was a driving force behind the priorities, particularly supporting the improvement of our high street. Bob will be missed by us all. Can I invite Council and other officers and members of the public to stand for a minute's silence in respect. Thank you. Perhaps invite a few tributes, first of all for Alderman Jeff Taylor. Councillor Piper.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Jeff Taylor, as anybody who went to his funeral will know, so well presented by Steve Trow, was a family man. and I mean, our thoughts go out to his family, including his wife Brenda, as you quite rightly pointed out, was a long-time councillor here. Jeff was also a passionate, committed and totally biased Aston Villa supporter. And I missed Jeff last night because he would have almost certainly been on Facebook pointing out that the 4-0 thrashing by Leicester City was pure luck. Leicester got 4 jammy goals and the referee was totally biased. But most of all to me, Jeff was a socialist and a friend. He was a Labour member for probably longer than most people in this room had actually been alive. He was a former British Leyland shop steward and was totally unbending in his belief that a better world is possible. He was loyal to the Labour Party but never blind to its failings, as many an MP found to their cost. No, he was certainly not reluctant to tell people what those failings were. He was, in recent years, fiercely supportive of Jeremy Corbyn. To those of us lucky enough to have known Jeff in the party and on the council, he was a great friend with a wicked sense of humour that could be cutting but was never ever cruel. I'll miss him terribly. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Trow?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think even some of the younger members of the council will have known and will remember Jeff, because, as Bob said, his commitment to the party and to political change and to the improvement of the lives of working people and their families was absolutely unrelenting. For I think it was over 60 years that he was a member of the Labour Party locally, and that's 60 of his 82 years. And I also have to personally thank or register my gratitude to Jeff and to Brenda, since they were my constituents in Old Warley Ward. And it was Jeff and Brenda who first encouraged me to stand as a Labour, for selection as a Labour candidate for Old Warley 10 years ago. And all the time since, they have never stinted with their advice and their support, for which I will always be grateful. But I've known Jeff much, much longer than that. And I counted him first really as a friend and a comrade way back in 1974, when Jeff was among the first councillors to be elected to this metropolitan borough. And when I first met him, when I came back from university and set up a community arts company called Jubilee Arts, and Jeff joined our board, because of his commitment to culture, to ideas, to opportunities for families, for children, for young people, this was the sort of territory that he has always spent a lot of his time on and has always been committed to, had always been committed to. And there were also years, the late 70s and early 80s, when maybe community activism was at its height. We had 59,000 council tenancies in Sandwell at that time. Think about it. 59,000. We had tenants' organisations operating and active throughout the borough. We had active minority ethnic groups, the Indian Workers Association and others. We had a direct works department with the Shop Stewards Committee, and we had all of those consistently working together to combat the excesses of Thatcher's Tory government, with campaigns against cuts, campaigns against racism and fascism, and Jeff was always at the front of those campaigns. He understood that being a councillor wasn't just a matter of attending committees and getting the bins emptied. It was about being there on the streets and working with people to try to bring about that change. But as Bob said, he also had a great sense of humour. Martin Prestige, who perhaps knew him best and everyone knows Alderman Martin Prestige, told me that there was a demonstration once in this chamber about tethering horses in Tipton. It's not an issue that's entirely gone away. I don't remember whether Jeff was in favour or against whatever the demonstration was about. But Martin said he looked up at the public gallery at the banner, and then he turned back and said, God, there's no H in us. He always knew how to run a campaign properly. He'd always lived in Oldbury. He was a son of Sandwell. He was someone I think this council can be proud to say was one of ours. And he lived a life that made a difference in the world. And it made a difference to everybody who knew him. He'll be missed.
Thank you very much, both. Perhaps could ask for tributes for Bob Lloyd. We've got Ian Jones, Councillor John Edwards, Councillor Boston. Is there anyone else who wants to make a tribute? Perhaps, do you want to? Okay, too. Yeah. Lida, would you like to start?
I think people who knew Bob knew that he was always at the heart of the Labour Party. Through thick and thin, and trials and tribulations, Bob would always find a way to go forward positively. When I formed my cabinet, Bob was an important part of that cabinet, and he would come bounding in like a child with a big smile on his face, obviously relishing the job that he was now doing for the people of Sandwell. He's been taken far too early, and he's not able to be here to see his work carried through. But his work will live on in Sandwell, and it will make a difference to the people of all our communities. And I just wanted to say to the family, really, that they had a dad, a brother, an uncle, a grandfather that they could be really, really proud of. And I know everyone in the cabinet really loved spending time with Bob. So our wishes go with the family.
Thank you. Councillor Ian Jones? Where are you? There you go.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Again, tributes coming in from all over. I knew Jeff Taylor as I was on I think it was my cabinet advisor some time ago. So condolences to Jeff's family. Bob, as we all know him, was very active, very committed, very community orientated. One of his first jobs was to run a homeless shelter, which set his path through the decades to come on his ability to help people. And I've been in Tipton and in Wednesbury and around, where a lot of people have come up and said how sad they are that he's passed so early. It was a great shock receiving the phone call, but his family, who are young, are coping, I suppose, with the sad passing. Bob was a young socialist, and again, that's something that isn't always aspired to by a lot of people. But Bob joined, I think, over 40 years ago when he could have done. I think I was about 16, and he was always proud of that fact. His employment reflected exactly what his ideals was. He was a community organiser for Tipton Action Group, helping many individuals and organisations through a period where there was some investment coming into Tipton, and he helped them organise, and a lot of those are still there now, still surviving and still providing much needed activities and services within the Tipton area. His latter employment was on an older people's estate, which he was very proud of, and he was the estate manager, which I suppose the Americans have it as a regular thing, an older people's village. Well, that's what was created in Tipton, and national recognition came down to film that in this country we have an older people's estate from within our own midst. So Bob helped others in other boroughs and other charities in other boroughs. But Bob Lloyd Senior was on this council and was a larger-than-life character. And I think Bob learned some of the lessons from his dad and probably steered a different course to what his dad would have done. But the ideals were still there from Bob Lloyd Senior, and the Tipton Litter Watch was created by Bob Lloyd Senior and Junior, and Bob was their chairman up until his sad demise. We are very hopeful and thankful that his son will follow in that footsteps at his young age, Adam, and I know that Zoe, looking after the young baby, will also. It's been a tough time for them, obviously, but Bob is missed, but never forgotten. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to pay my respects to Bob Lloyd as well. I first met Bob when he was a teenager, in his mid-teens, and his dad brought him to Wednesbury Labour Club one night, and Bob kind of hung around, joined the Young Socialists, became a member of the party, and stayed with that from that day to his untimely death. So the very nature of his passing, the suddenness of it, must have been a huge shock to anybody who knew him, particularly those close to him in his family. That sort of passing is always seems to be the best option for the person concerned, but it must have been a real difficult time for those who were left behind so suddenly with no chance to prepare or try and get a grip of the idea. So it must have been a real shock, and I really do feel for his family. I've known his mum Olga to way back again when they used to go to the Labour Club when young Bob Lloyd was in his teens. Bob's dad, Bob Senior, as the last speaker said, was a member of this council for a long time, and held some key positions in the council over that period. And Bob Junior went on to serve in the same way. It must be very difficult, and I want to pay my respects. I want to pass my condolences to the family, who must be struggling to cope with the enormity of what's happened to Bob Lloyd. They'll certainly miss him for the rest of their lives, and so will many people in this chamber as well. It's a sad day and one to be regretted, but best wishes and condolences to the family as they try and cope with this major tragedy.
Thank you. Councillor Boston.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's often said you are the legacy you leave behind. I knew Bob Lloyd for a relatively short period of time to my other colleagues, only being elected last year, but he had a profound impact on me to see the courage and the vision with which he took on his role in cabinet. My last memory of Bob, literally days before he suddenly passed away, was the Community Wealth Building Summit, and I just couldn't help feeling invigorated and really excited actually about the future vision of Sandwell. And sometimes it's not spoken about, but we're all aware of it, that the pressures on local government now are hugely immense, and to be a cabinet member that comes forth with that bold socialist vision, regardless of the constraints that we are facing elsewhere, nationally namely, I think is a huge credit to Bob and the legacy he leaves behind, and all of that which comes from this strategy that the council are embarking upon, I think will remain a firm legacy for Bob and something that his family can really be proud of. And like my colleagues, my deepest condolences are with his loved ones. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Khatoon?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I've known Bob for nearly 30 years, from the days of Tipton City Challenge. We were campaigning together for many initiatives in Tipton. Bob was a good advocate for local people. He knew about the issues. He was very knowledgeable on especially community sector regeneration and the health field. Sat with him on the PCT, Primary Care Trust, as a non-exec. And, with his work that he did with the SCVO and Tipton Action Group and the Boscobel, he brought in millions for Tipton as a chair for Murray Hall Trust as well. So a lot of investment in Tipton. He was passionate about the voluntary sector. He was always asked the right questions. He was a very good scrutineer. And he also had solutions to problems, not just questions. He found solutions as well if there was issues. He was a keen motorcyclist. And as a person, if I ever needed any help or advice, I found it very easy to talk to Bob. I did speak to him as a VME woman, and this was in my early years. I could actually go and talk to him. He was always supportive, and of other groups that were in the area. Bob would help anyone, and he was a man of wisdom, and I know many people in Tipton will miss him. And my condolences go out to his family and friends too.
Thank you very much. I hope those tributes are passed on to the families. I think there's not much to add, but as a colleague who will be sadly missed. Thank you very much. And now we must move on. To start with the agenda, are there any apologies?
We have apologies for absence from Councillors Carmichael, Costigan, Downing, Elizabeth Giles, Luke Giles, Councillor Horton, Pam Hughes, Peter Hughes, Yassim Hussain, Councillor Corser, Lewis, Moore, Rawlings, Sanders, Taylor and Webb. With 16 apologies and 56 members present.
Well done for staying well. We seem to have quite a lot of colleagues off sick at the moment, so collectively I'm sure we all send our best wishes to them. Are there any members to declare any interesting matters to be discussed at this meeting? Thank you. To confirm the minutes of the meeting that's held on the 14th of January 2020 as a correct record. Is that agreed? No. Not been notified of any urgent business. Have we received any?
No notifications of any urgent business.
Okay. 5 is my little announcements. I promise it won't be long. January and February have been a little bit quieter. I have to say November and December was extremely busy. We've been all over the place, particularly with Christmas events, including switching on some lights by a new app with the Tipton twins, the 95-year-old Tipton twins. That was fun. It gives my staff the time to reflect and build on continued success for the years ahead. Since last council, Deputy Mayor and I have attended 31 official events between us, a number of unofficial ones as well. Deputy Mayor and myself have taken part in 4 citizenship events and really do enjoy promoting Sandwell at each of them. Deputy Mayor and Consort attended the Mayor of Dudley's Charity Curry Evening, and I'm happy to announce we have a Charity Curry Evening at the Little Bangla in Langley on the 31st of March. Tickets available at the Big House, priced £15, absolute bargain. You'll have a great night and some great food and help the charities which are Brushstrokes and Sandwell Young Carers. So I hope as many people as will turn up for that. Thank you all for attending the Holocaust Memorial Day, and particularly thanks for those for the kind words said to me afterwards. It was a day to respect and honour the members of victims of the Holocaust and genocide, particularly of the Second World War and conflicts since then, and for those who survived. The event was really well attended and appears to be going from strength to strength. Just last week, I had the pleasure of attending the Hampstead Miners Memorial event in Great Barr. We remembered 25 miners who lost their lives in a mining tragedy in 1908. It's been a tradition for Sandwell mayors to attend this. It's nice to know that this event is still commemorated. The memorial is in a prominent place, gives the impression of disaster. It's quite simple, and does remind people of our industrial heritage, the heavy industry. Also last week we had the honour of the Deputy Ambassador from Nepal. He should have been the ambassador, but unfortunately he had to go back to Nepal. They are promoting tourism again in Nepal. Nepal, as you remember, has had a few setbacks, shall we say. They changed from being a monarchy to a democracy in 2008, and when that was all sorted, there was the dreadful earthquake of 2015, only to be repeated 2 weeks after that. They say that they have rebuilt much of their infrastructure and their buildings, and if you can find some way to offset the carbon debt of flying there, I'd urge you to consider going to Nepal and seeing some of their beautiful countryside and culture. On the way in, the 8th of March was International Women's Day. We have a week of events. So Sarah from Sandwell Women's Aid was sitting outside collecting articles. If you didn't know about it, or if you forgot to bring it, or would like to bring items for the Women's Aid, anything will do. Toiletries that are nice, sanitary towels, nappies, anything that might make life in a Women's Aid place just a little bit bearable. Please bring them to Big House and we'll pass them on, or Sarah will come and collect them. And so finally, my staff, I'm allowed to call them, my staff at the Big House continue to work very hard to ensure my term of office is a great success, and have been organising civic events. I must say it's been an absolute honour to represent the borough in this way. We really do see the absolute best of Sandwell, and we're proud to acknowledge people's achievements. This coming Saturday, 14th of March, we recognise our old friend Roger Horton and honour him by giving him the freedom of the borough. If you can at all, if you're at all free on Saturday morning, please do come along. Roger doesn't need any introduction. If you need an introduction, well, yes, well, he doesn't, does he? So that's just the Mayor's announcements. We'll move on now. Have we received any petitions and standing order number 5?
None received in advance.
No, thank you. Any written questions to the Mayor, Leader of the Council or others?
None received in advance.
No, thank you. So move on to agenda item 8, which is the corporate plan. So corporate plan, big plans for a great place for the people of Sandwell. We do have some recommendations. We need to make a decision on this. This has been out for consultation. It's currently the draft plan. We need to adopt it. Leader, do you want to introduce it?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to spend a little bit of time on this because it is a really important document, and these are big plans for a great place, and I don't want people to get the wrong impression. I genuinely believe Sandwell is a great place, and I go around the borough and I talk to people who equally think Sandwell is a great place. But we need to continually renew what we're doing and rethink what we're doing and why we're doing it and who it's for. So I'm very excited to be able to present the new corporate plan, which will take us over the next 5 years to continue the journey to Vision 2030. This is the first corporate plan for some time. Before this, we've been working to deliver the 2030 vision through our individual directorate business plans. It's important that people realise this plan isn't intended to set everything out. It's intended to set a skeleton upon which we can hang some of the specific things that we will do. We'll be developing the detailed delivery plans to sit below and you'll be invited to help us start developing these in the next few months. It's really important that we develop a one-team approach to developing these outcomes, moving out of our directorate silos, and I know we've already made huge strides in joining together different aspects of council services, but we have to make greater strides given the challenges we will continue to face through austerity in the future. The plan is specifically structured around 6 strategic outcomes. The best start in life for children and young people, we believe, is an absolute essential priority. If we do not grow children well, they will not be able to manage in our complex world as adults. We believe that people should be able to live well and age well, and it's important that we direct good quality services to our adults who are able to participate fully in the rich streams of life. We think we should have a strong and resilient community that is able to cope with the challenges that our modern world presents to us. We think people should have quality homes in which to live in neighbourhoods that are thriving. We want a strong and inclusive economy, and we wanted a connected and inclusive, connected and accessible Sandwell to all of our residents. And we want it all underpinned by a one council approach. We don't want to bring different department ideas to the table. We want cross-department ideas being brought to the table. All of the elected members were invited to attend one of 2 engagement sessions, and we were able to take down a huge amount of comments and ideas for how we could influence the document, and we have incorporated those into the document. Cabinet also referred the plan to Budget and Corporate Scrutiny Management Board, and the Scrutiny Board considered the plan on the 19th of February and provided a number of comments to Cabinet. And that consultation has led to changes from the original iteration of the plan, which have specifically strengthened our intentions around climate change, our relationship with the Children's Trust, our intent to build homes for life standards, and our continued commitment to young people who are transitioning into adulthood. The Budget and Corporate Scrutiny Management Board also highlighted that it would be useful to include some measure of success in the plan in order that they are better able to carry out their role of holding the Council to account. And they also suggested that different versions of the plan be developed for different audiences, and that consideration be given to simplifying some of the language used. And it's proposed that appropriate measures of success and different versions of the plan for different audiences will be developed as part of our next steps in taking the plan forward. We are entering an exciting period of change. We've developed a really challenging agenda, and we must deliver for the people of Sandwell. We need now to organise ourselves in the right way to make sure it happens, that all of us carry responsibility for making sure that it happens. I want us to build one council, one team corporate ethos, I don't want competitiveness, I want cooperation. For each of our strategic outcomes, there will be a detailed delivery plan sitting underneath it. The first step will be developing these delivery plans for this plan together, and we will be engaging with staff and with members and wider partners in drawing up the plans. Please, everyone, join us in developing and delivering this exciting agenda for Sandwell. So I recommend it to you, and I will take any questions.
Thank you, Leader. It's a big document, and I know many people have already contributed, but are there any questions to the Leader? No? In that case, the recommendations are set before you. Sorry? Oh, Councillor Boston.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. May I say that this document that's come before us today is a real testament of the vision this council has under the Leader and her cabinet, under a Labour socialist vision for what our area can become. And it strikes me as a contrast to what we're seeing coming out regionally at the moment from the Tory mayor. And I think this plan is especially to be credited because of what this council has endured over the past 10 years. Devastating austerity. Let's be very clear, politicians in central government, Conservatives in central government, have tried their best to decimate our children's services, youth services, and other lifelines that people in our area suffers hugely from social deprivation, rely on. And it's to the credit of this council that we have been able to keep our libraries, keep our children's centres open and available. Certainly in my own ward, the Thimble Mill Library plays a huge role in supporting families and communities at moments of crisis, opening the doors to refugees, and I really and confidently believe that with this vision we've seen before us today, we can continue to build on this despite the challenges that we face. And finally, Madam Mayor, if I may, we are here speaking about this vision, but a lot of work has gone into it, so I think huge thanks goes to the over 4,000 officers that work tirelessly for our residents each and every day in these tough conditions. It's to their credit that we see this plan as well. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Was there a question? Okay.
It was a comment, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Right. Any other questions? Moving on. Recommendations are set out to you on the first page of item 8. Are those agreed? Can I have a show of hands, please? Any those against? Any abstentions? Thank you. Moving on, item 9, the inclusive economy deal. Recommendations are set out before you. Councillor Millard, can I invite you to introduce the deal?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A few of you will be relieved to hear I'm not going to do any singing today after the time I brought this to Cabinet, but I will take you through it a little bit. The report's seeking approval for Sandwell's inclusive economy deal, and it's been co-developed in coalition with residents, businesses and the voluntary and community sector. If 10 years of Tory austerity has taught us anything, it's that the Tories aren't going to help the people of Sandwell. So our council, our Labour council, what we will do is we will help the people of Sandwell. Our dear friend Councillor Bob Lloyd, who we talked about earlier, started to develop this deal when he became a Cabinet member last year, and it's actually my honour to bring it to the full council this evening. Sandwell's inclusive economy deal provides a unique opportunity to showcase and promote Sandwell on a local, regional and national platform. It's distinctive in its approach for two fundamental interrelated reasons. The comprehensive engagement has meant that rather than a traditional strategy produced by an organisation and later consulted on, this deal has been developed by our communities for our communities. The second key element is the deal is Samwell's deal, and it's the first in the country of its kind. And its core is allowing for participatory economic policy making. What it is, it's an informal agreement between the council and everyone who lives here, works here, to work together and create a better Samwell and deliver wealth for all. Samwell's deal has a clear focus on the economy of Samwell by developing joint interventions which have a positive impact on the local economy and ensuring wealth creation is kept in Samwell and shared within Samwell. There's 3 distinct deals within the deal. That's a deal with residents, a deal with businesses, and a deal with the voluntary and community sector. And it's built on that collaboration and an understanding of what each area can offer to make Samwell a better place. The primary focus of the new approach is about making Samwell a better place to live, to work and to do business. It's about improving individual and community well-being, living standards and employment opportunities. Well, it's also encouraging sustained investment to benefit residents and businesses across all our 6 towns. These deals will aim to offer a better living standards, greater employment opportunities and new investment to reach all the residents and all the businesses. Samwell is the supply chain capital of the UK and the employment hub of the Black Country, with nearly 59,000 people travelling into Samwell and through Samwell every day due to work. And it's got a 6.2 billion economy, which is growing faster than the UK average. This inclusive economy deal will capitalise on some of that investment and the opportunities that are happening now in Samwell. And the opportunities we've got are stuff like the Samwell Aquatic Centre, the Metro Extension, the Midland Metropolitan Hospital and the 5G test bed. So there's lots coming. And it's actually a once-in-a-generation opportunity to reinvigorate Samwell and to ensure that residents of Samwell make the most of this chance. The deal itself will communicate these opportunities to make everyone in Samwell part of it, the development of it, to build, and what we'll do is we'll feed directly back to many of the residents. Samwell's got a really strong voluntary and community sector, and the development of the deal in partnership with the VCS builds on the Samwell Compact and provides some practical interventions to support the development of the sector going forward. And what it is a unique opportunity, a really unique opportunity to deliver real change through a collaborative working. It's going to provide opportunities for the council to change, opportunities that will make significant positive impact for everyone who works in Samwell. So I can say all that, like I do, but actually, how does it work? In reality, how does it work? Well, we're going to introduce the voting on infrastructure priorities using stuff like the community infrastructure levy funding. That's about sharing people's ideas, working together and voting on it, making decisions on it. We're going to develop a climate change deal with residents, businesses and engaging people to develop actions and initiatives. With businesses and voluntary organisations, we'll be looking to buy and procure locally. So stuff that we're potentially paying someone down in London to do, we're going to try and get companies in Samwell to deliver those products, to deliver that service. So that money stays in Samwell, they employ people in Samwell, and they keep working in Samwell, and the money stays in Samwell. The council will ensure that residents are ready to become active citizens and make the most of opportunities of regeneration, such as the Aquatic Centre. So this is the deal. It's Samwell's deal, and it is a big deal. I'll move the report and take any questions.
Are there any questions on this report? Councillor Shackleton.
Could I ask Councillor Millard, have you been able to visit many businesses just to see the situation at the present and how we're going to enforce or encourage change or whatever to improve the situation, because I know I spend a lot of my time visiting local businesses to see what they do and to see what they add to Sandwell's economy at present. Thank you.
Just a minute. Are there any other questions? Yeah. Okay. We'll answer that one then.
No problem. Yeah, thanks, Councillor Shackleton. Yeah, we've actually got a really good engagement with businesses. We work really closely with our business ambassadors. They're having a massive impact. They're getting really involved in the process. And they're all business owners in Sandwell who volunteer their own time to come and work with the council to how we develop and how we take things forward. I'm currently developing the skills strategy as part of my employment and skills cabinet role, and they've taken the skills strategy away, looked at it, developed it, and told us what are the skills they require, what are the skills they need, and how and we're able to support them and they support us. So we've got the business ambassadors, plus I myself have gone to several of the businesses and visited shop floors as well as the directors and the managers, because I want to see across the board what is happening. So yeah, the business community are really on side. They want this money coming into Sandwell. They want business coming into Sandwell, and they're really in favour of it.
I think you've answered the question.
All right,
Leader.
I like to talk.
Yeah, we've got other things to do though. Get on with it.
Councillor Millan, I just wanted to ask you to comment on, we hear lots about things closing and the economy contracting, and I wondered if you could say something about the position in Sandwell.
Well, as I said in the speech, actually Sandwell is going the other way. We are actually showing more growth than the rest of the Black Country and actually quite a lot of the UK. We are building. We are going forward. We've got inward investment. We've got outward investment. We are really trying to build and develop. When you look at things like the aquatic centre, you look at the hospital, and then other things we've got in the pipeline that are coming through. It's all positive. It's really proactive, and I know that we're all across the cabinet. We're all pushing that agenda.
Okay, so no more questions. I'll ask you for a decision. The recommendations are set before you in the first page of item 9. Can I have a show of hands, please? All those in favour? Thank you. Those against? Abstentions? That's carried. Moving on to a very big item. Council finances, how to spend a very large amount of money. The recommendations are set before you. Councillor Ali, can I ask you to introduce the council finances for 2020-21 to 2022-23?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The process of putting together the annual budget is one of the most complex pieces of work we do each year. It involves hundreds of people and tens of thousands of pieces of financial information. And I want to put on record my thanks to everyone who has been involved, and especially our outstanding finance team, who have helped to guide this council for 10 years of Tory austerity. The budget for the coming financial year protects frontline services and invests in the future. It includes a proposed council tax increase of 1.99% to fund local services, plus an extra 2% to help pay for adult social care services. This increase would mean an extra 72 pence to 96 pence per week in council tax for most Sandwell residents from the 1st of April 2020. And our poorest residents will continue to receive support through our local council reduction scheme. Although we're not expecting any government cuts to our funding this year, we're still running the council with around £180 million less each year than we did back in 2010. Austerity simply has not ended. And our demand for our services is getting greater, especially in adult social care, children's social care, and special needs transport. These are challenges for councils across the country. So although we are not cutting council budgets this year, we have no choice but to put council tax up if we are to protect and fund vital services. Now, we don't want to do this, and we strongly believe that a national solution is required to fund social care, but we need to make sure we properly fund services for our most vulnerable people. In future, we will have a look at making savings in other areas to make sure we continue to fund vital services to help vulnerable, disabled, young and older people, as demand for these services increases. Which brings me on to the Children's Trust. The financial situation with the Trust are very well documented. Just 2 weeks ago, the Cabinet approved an additional £5 million of one-off funding from reserves to the Trust to contribute to their current overspend. This can't continue, and a recent report shows that councils across the country have overspent an approximately £3.2 billion on children's social care over the last 5 years. So we know this just isn't a Sandwell problem. However, the fact that our services are delivered through the Trust makes agreeing a budget much more complicated. Officers from both parties have been working on this for many months, and I'm really happy to announce that the Council has now written to the Trust with a funding offer that is affordable to the Council and which balances the budget for the Trust over the next 3 years. The funding for that offer is built into this budget report. This budget just isn't about surviving the impact of austerity. It's also about an ambitious programme for the future. You've already heard about our big plans for a great place. We have a great track record of investing in Sandwell as a place, including our council home new build programme and our new schools, and of course the new aquatic centre in Smethwick. Overall, this report recommends capital investment of over 300 million over the next 3 years. It is also important to make sure that the Council maintains a strong level of reserves, and after consideration of the Council's strategic risks, the forecast level of free balances at the end of 2019-2020 is likely to remain at the level of 12.1 million, which were held at the end of 2018-2019. This is equivalent to 4.8% of the Council's net expenditure budget for 2020-2021 and is within the prudent parameters set by the Section 151 officer. A strong budget means the Council is not only protecting day-to-day services but also making big investments in exciting projects across the 6 towns that will benefit the people of Sandwell for years to come. And I'm happy to finally unlock the funding gathered through the Community Infrastructure Levy so that we can invest in the sort of things that are important to the people across our 6 towns. And I'm excited by the possible funding that could be available through the Towns Fund for West Bromwich, Smethwick and Riley Regis, as well as the investment approved by Cabinet last week for Wednesbury. Our great towns are a thing that gives Sandwell its identity, and it's important that we invest in them. From much needed new housing and school buildings to investing in transport networks, town centres, leisure facilities, there are many positive projects the budget is supporting. We also want to make sure money is spent within Sandwell. You've just heard community wealth building is about spending more of the council's money with local businesses. This supports the local economy. It means more jobs, apprenticeships for local people, meaning more people earning, better spending power and more money going back into the Sandwell economy. Sandwell has a strong track record for managing our finances, and this budget continues that track record. However, I want to end on a note of caution. We know that the government is planning to announce changes to the way councils are funded at some point this year.
Just stop you just for a second. I'm afraid I forgot to announce that I'm suspending Standing Order 11.6 to allow Councillor Eileen moving the motion on council finances to speak for up to 10 minutes. Carry on.
Thank you. So I have to end with a note of caution. We know that the government is planning to announce changes to the way councils are funded at some point this year, and the early signs are deeply worrying. The LGA analysis of the proposed formula for funding adult social care shows a massive shift in funding from more deprived councils like us to much wealthier shires. Sandwell's cuts would be almost 16%, making it impossible for us to continue to deliver services to our most vulnerable people. This cannot be allowed to happen, and I would urge everyone from all political parties, including our local MPs, to join the fight to ensure that this council receives the funding it needs to deliver the services for the people of Sandwell. I move the report, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Councillor Ali has moved the report. Are you moving the recommendations as set out on the agenda? Is that seconded? Councillor Crompton. Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Gill.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Ali, as you mentioned in your report, that the the austerity has not ended, but the government keeps telling us that austerity has ended. So can you explain that, how it's going to be affecting us in the next 3 years?
Thank you, Councillor Singh. And I'll make it very clear, but no doubt the government will not listen to this. But the simple answer is no, austerity has not ended. It is good that we haven't got to deal with any more cuts next year, but this council is getting £180 million less each year compared to 2010. Imagine what we could do if we still had that extra money. Austerity continues to have a massive impact on the people of Sandwell. Austerity has not ended, and we have to continue to fight for this council to receive the funding we need. Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments?
Councillor Ali, a local Conservative MP has criticised Sandwell Council for the 3.99 increase, proposed 3.99 increase in council tax, even though that increase is a line which they've proposed. Can you give me an assurance that this increase is necessary?
Thank you, Councillor Hussain. So even with this increase, Sandwell will continue to have one of the lowest council tax levels in the country, about £100 a year less than the average. Most of the increase will go to providing social care services to our most vulnerable people. We strongly believe that a national solution is needed for adult social care, and it is a disgrace that after 10 years of a Conservative government, we are still waiting to hear what their proposals are. So until that happens, we have no choice but to increase council tax. Thank you.
Any further questions? Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can you comment on the LGA's position, which is a Conservative dominated LGA, who actually are commenting that the budgets around the country, including Conservatives, administrations and our own, have been and are in need of billions of pounds of extra resources, and they are lobbying the government in tomorrow's budget for extra money for social care. If I'm right, £180 million a year for 10 years is something like £1,800 million, and then we have people who are on social media criticising us for having to put up the council tax just to keep services going. If you can comment on what the LGA's position is, that would be interesting to those who are on the streets denigrating us for carrying out our services to keep them open.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. So the LGA have been very clear on their position, and they've made their position nationally known to all of us. However, the Conservatives are dismissing the reporters to say that none of our areas will be affected. But we know what will happen. Ultimately, we will be affected. So we will continue to meet with our new Conservative MPs as well, meet with them, lobby them to ensure that Sandwell doesn't lose funding, because, as you say, £1.8 billion essentially. It's 10 years of lost money that we could have in Sandwell and invest in services for our people.
Any further questions? Right, this is a requirement that the recommendations as set out on the agenda have been moved and seconded. There is a requirement that we take a named vote for this. Chief Executive, would you please start?
Okay. Councillor Zahoor Ahmed. Councillor Shaheen Akhtar. Councillor Samir Akhtar. Councillor Wasim Ali. Councillor Pete Allen. Councillor Rain Ashman. Councillor Babu Singh Bauer. Councillor Ahmed Boston. Councillor Bill Cherrington. Councillor Jenny Chidley. Councillor Maria Crompton. Councillor Sharon Davis. Councillor Yvonne Davis. Councillor Bawa Dalu, sorry. Councillor Susan Eves. Not here. Okay. Councillor John Edwards. Councillor Bill Gavin. Councillor Elaine Giles. Councillor Gerdish Gill. Councillor Manjit Gill. Councillor Simon Hackett. Councillor Joanne Hadley. Councillor Suzanne Hartwell. Councillor Sandra Hevican. Councillor Mushtaq Hussain. Councillor Zahir Hussain. Councillor Dr Anne Yaron. Councillor Anne Jarvis. Councillor Ian Jones. Councillor Olwyn Jones. Councillor Richard Jones. Councillor Stephen Jones. Councillor Saida Khatun. Councillor Thabuso Mabina. Councillor Richard McVitie. Councillor Steve Melia. Councillor Kay Miller. Councillor Danny Millard. Councillor Iqbal Pada. Councillor Sue Phillips. Councillor Bob Piper. Councillor Liam Priest. Councillor Mohammed Ralph. Councillor Anne Shackleton. She's left. Cute. Councillor Farah Shaheen. Councillor Karen Sims. Councillor Rajbir Singh. Councillor Mahinda Taggar. Councillor Chris Tranter. Councillor Steve Troe. Councillor Joyce Underhill. Councillor Caroline White. Councillor Christopher Worsey. Thank you.
Thank you. That appears to be carried. Oh. Oh. What have you done?
Did I miss? Where are we? Yeah. My apologies, Councillor. Councillor Keith Alcott. Thank you.
Hey. Anyone else been missed out? Thank you very much. That appears to be carried. Thank you very much. Moving on. Item number 11. Pay policy and gender pay gap. 2 recommendations. Can I invite Councillor Ali to present the report on the pay policy statement and respond to questions?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So this is an important report that sets out key parts of the Council's pay policy. This Council has previously taken action to increase the pay of our lowest paid employees. The Council started paying the living wage as a minimum to all employees from the 1st of April 2018. 3/4 of those employees who are receiving the living wage supplement are female. As a result of these changes, I am pleased to announce the pay ratio between the lowest paid employee and the Chief Executive has narrowed from 1 to 10 in 2017 to 1 to 8 today. This report also includes details of our gender pay gap. This is an equality measure that shows the difference in average earnings between men and women, expressed as a percentage of male earnings. The reasons why men are paid more on average than women are complex, and there is no single reason why this gap exists. When we first published this figure back in 2018, the gap was 8.4%. It reduced to 7.1% last year, and I am pleased to announce that it has reduced even further to 6.4%. This hasn't happened by accident. When we made the decision to pay the foundation living wage, we knew it would have a bigger impact on women than men. And over the last 2 years, we have also increased the number of female employees in more senior roles. But we can do more, and we will do more in the future. I move the report, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions on the gender pay gap? Okay. Again, I'll ask if the recommendations are approved. Show of hands, please. Thank you. Those against? Any abstentions? No, so that's carried. Thank you very much. Moving on. Item 12. Reports from the Council's representatives on the West Midlands Fire and Rescue Authority, Transport for West Midlands, Police and Crime Panel and West Midlands Combined Authority. Can we start with Councillor Edwards to present the report on the Fire and Rescue Authority and to take questions?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The first part of the report deals with the Fire Authority's revenue position for 2021. We set a budget on the 17th of February at the Fire Authority that has a revenue budget of just over £100 million, £100.1 million, mainly supported by Council Tax income from the 7 local authorities who pay a precept to the Fire Authority for that service. We increased Council Tax by the legal maximum, 1.99%, because we, like the Council in Sandwell, we've had significant and painful reductions in our spending during the period of austerity. But even with that 1.99% increase, West Midlands Fire Service still costs less than any other fire service in the country in its council tax take. Somebody living in a Band D property will pay £61.81 a year for their fire service. Most people don't live in Band D properties. We live in A, Bs or Cs. If you're in an A band property, you'll pay just £41 a year for your fire service in the West Midlands, less than £1 a week for the best insurance policy it's possible to buy for that kind of money. So it's still a bargain, in fact, in terms of the cash that people pay for the fire service. Just like Sandwell Council, the revenue position for next year is slightly better than it has been since 2010-11. The budget, the settlement this year doesn't mean any more cuts in the coming year for the fire service. That we'll be able to put additional investment into the service of around £2 million. The problem is this is a one-year settlement. The government made it perfectly clear that there was no guarantee that this slightly better position will continue after the impending year. So we are very cautious and very wary about what still waits down the road. The government are given guarantees, or for what that's worth from this government, assurances to the police and the National Health Service that they intend to invest in those services rather than cut them. I believe that when I see it, I have to say, but they've made no similar assurances for the fire service in spite of the difficulty that we've had in the last 10 years and the increasing difficulty in maintaining response times and a proper service for people in the West Midlands. We've also got, apart from that uncertainty, we've also got 2 major issues over pension liabilities. The first one results from the government acting illegally when they changed the firefighter pension scheme, and that's since figured its way to court. The government was found guilty of not considering equality issues in that report, in that change, to pensions, and they've been ordered to unwind some of the impact of that pension change. The potential liability to West Midlands Council from that government illegal action, which we've now got to pick up potentially, is £1.5 million a year. There's a further pensions issue. The contributions were increased into the firefighter pension fund by the government across the country, across the fire sector. That will represent an increase in £125 million contributions into the firefighter pension scheme. For West Midlands, it's £6.2 million a year. The governments have picked up around 95% of that extra this year, the coming year 2021, but again they've made no guarantee that they will do that in future years. Clearly that 6.2 billion plus the 1.5 million pound from the government's illegal action on the pension fund do come to bear on the West Midlands. We could not find that kind of money without reducing the number of firefighters, probably through compulsory redundancy and decommissioning fire stations. You simply couldn't find that money from anywhere else on top of what we've already reduced by in the last 9 years or so. The capital programme over on page 2 of the report, or the second page, capital programme for 2021, 6.5 million, all funded by the West Midlands Fire Service itself from its revenue earmarked balances. No money again at all coming from the government to provide capital funding. We clearly need to use that money for replacing worn-out fire appliances. We need to build a fire training house at the new Coventry Fire Station. We need to buy thermal imaging cameras. We need to repair dilapidated fire stations. The new build at Aston is now complete. There's no capital resources left for any other fire station to be replaced, and we've got fire stations that were originally built in the 1930s and the 1950s. So you can imagine that the need for capital investment is dire, but we simply do not have that resource. The service investment, the £2 million extra I said we were going to spend in 2021, I've set out under the heading service investment. You can see that the £750,000 will be spent to prevent the planned use of balances. We thought we would have to top up next year's budget by, again, using more of our protected balances. We can not invest that £750,000 from balances into the service. We can meet that now from the £2 million growth that we're able to deliver. A further 2.25 million, £250,000 will be used on digital services to enhance IT capacity and support the response that we give to the public. And £1 million of it we're going to use to put back into services to actually buy some more voluntary additional shifts from firefighters. We've been existing primarily on voluntary shifts for lots of our capacity in over the last 10 years. So we've lost a quarter of our full-time firefighters. We buy back time from the ones who are left, and they provide additional shifts to provide the cover to keep machines on the run. We've had to drop the appliance availability from 99% to 93%. Clearly that has an impact on how soon the fire engine gets there, what it can do when it gets there, whether it's the strength is in the attack to deliver the service. So there's a real issue about fire appliance availability. So we're going to put £1 million back into that for this year only until we see what next year looks like in terms of will there be more cuts or not. But that will mean that in 2021 we'll have a better appliance availability, pushed up a little bit from the 93% that we're currently working at. So no increase in the established numbers of firefighters. We can't afford to employ any additional firefighters. All we're doing at the moment is recruiting to replace those who leave the service. So we maintain a very basic number of firefighters to deliver the best service we can. General balances and reserves, and this was talked about in the Sandwell Finance Report. We've had eight fire ministers over the last 9 years, 8 of them. Forgotten the names of many of them. They come, they look around, they implement a few cuts and they disappear again. Never stop to see the consequences of what they're doing. And it has been an absolute disaster. There's no continuity, no understanding of the service, no relationships in terms of conversations. I'm sorry, Chair. Can I just finish this one? This is the last significant section. So what the fire sector did across the country was, like many of us, anticipated the fact that after the bankers' crash in 2008, there would be difficulties, and they started to put in the West Midlands to put money aside, money into balances, money into free balances, to actually cushion the blow that we knew was coming. We were criticised heavily by each of those 8 fire ministers through that period to say we've got too much money in the bank, why were we hoarding money, why didn't we spend it instead of asking them for more money at the time. But of course the reality is that without that money in the bank to provide a capital programme and to top up the revenue budget, there would have been a car crash. We would have actually fallen off the cliff in the first couple of years because the cuts were so great in the early years, without revenue balances to invest, soften the blow, to give us time to make the change, lose firefighters, change the way we worked. It would have been a disaster for Westminster Fire Service. So that money was well planned, well accounted for and well used. But it's at the point now where it's almost gone. The revenue balances the free balances will be all gone by next year. There'll be no money for a capital programme after 2004-05, unless the government change the way they currently perform in terms of investment. So we are making representations about that. The last thing to say, Madam Chair, is there are no performance figures, as you'll see on the report. The data warehouse at Westminster Fire Service was down and remains down, so we can't actually draw the data out. As soon as I get that information, I'll forward it to members of the council so you can see the performance that's been delivered over the last period.
Are there any questions to Councillor Edwards? Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can John comment on, if I've read the report, this year will be light to the tune of about £500,000 just to fund this year's shortfall in the pension contributions, and going forward, could he explain if the Fire Authority has lobbied government to meet the full 6.2%, 6.2 million of the pension shortfall? Or is it that, like the vote in Parliament last week, where there was a vote of thanks for the firefighters for all their efforts in the floods, and our local Tory MPs voted against that? Has there been any reflection on that from the authority since that vote?
Yes, Madam Mayor. That vote in Parliament was completely shocking. You know, firefighters and emergency staff were working in the flooded areas, trying to provide help and support on top of the other stuff that I was involved in anyway. And Tory MPs couldn't even be bothered to say thank you for the work that was done there. The government paid no heed to water issues. The fire service across the country is not funded for water incidents. It's not taken into account in the grant. There's no money for equipment that you need to deal with floods and fire and water-related incidents. The government simply don't recognise that the fire service do that. They'd soon recognise it if the fire service stopped doing that. But in fact, they pay nothing towards it in terms of contribution through the revenue support grant. And it's a real disgrace. And we've been talking to government about that for certainly in the 9 years I've been back on the forest this time. It's a key issue for us because we need funding to be able to provide the crews and the equipment to deliver that service. And it would be a calamity if that couldn't be afforded. The pension issues, the government have created a £1.5 million problem because they acted illegally when they changed the firefighters' pension scheme 3 years ago. They've also provided another £6.2 million problem for the West Midlands because of the increase in contributions, with no contribution from the government guaranteed long term. If the government don't change their mind on those two figures, the 1.5 million and the 6.2 million, and that becomes a responsibility of the fire service in the West Midlands from 21 onwards, I think I said earlier, the only way we could find that sort of money now, after losing £38 million already of revenue support grants since 2010-11, £38 million, 50% of our government grant has been taken away. We couldn't find an additional 6.2 million plus 1.8 million, 1.5 million without simply shedding staff. Would be the only way to do that. We'd have to make firefighters redundant and close fire stations. Now that's been driven home to the government in the strongest possible way, not just by the West Midlands but by every other fire authority who are caught in the same trap. But talking to this government is like talking to there was no response. They weren't talk, they weren't engaged, they passed the buck, they say it's your problem, not ours, we're giving you adequate funding, are you not spending it properly? It's just a dialogue with the deaf. They are awful. And it's about time they saw sense and realised that the services that the public sector provide, particularly a blue light service that saves lives on a regular basis, needs proper funding in a civilised society. This government's not listening. The last one didn't listen. And if they don't listen going forward, then we will see the demise of the West Midlands Fire and Rescue Service in the way that we know it today.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Received that report. Thank you. Moving on to 12B, to receive the report for the Council's Lead Representative of Transport for the West Midlands, up to page 176. Councillor Akhtar, do you want to present this?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Following on from the transport report, the Commonwealth Games. So the transport planning for the Commonwealth Games is proceeding well. A 12-week engagement consultation took place in which the responses are in the process of being analysed. Initial technical design work is progressing on the necessary traffic management arrangements for the Games, which includes the local access considerations and the Games route network. The exact measures required will be finalised for review in approximately 2021. Transport working groups have also been set up so that Transport for West Midlands and stakeholders can understand the requirements for accessing the sites, including the Sandwell Aquatic Centre, and initial discussions have also taken place with Highways England and Network Rail, and hopefully more detailed briefings are being planned. In regards to the M5 Oldbury Viaduct works, All the main works have now been completed on the north and southbound carriageways, and all 3 lanes are operational with a hard shoulder at a temporary 50 miles per hour speed limit currently in place on both sides of the road. And Highways England are trying to test the technology on the new gantries that are put in place. Overnight closures for the works are currently being coordinated with Sandwell Highways. Going on to the bus network, progress has been made on delivering the aims and objectives of the strategic vision for bus in the West Midlands. It was approved by the West Midlands Combined Authority Board on the 9th of November 2018, and the Transport for West Midlands have commissioned an outline business case assessing the mechanisms within the Bus Services Act 2017 to understand the most appropriate mechanism for improving the bus services with a clear understanding of the risks, costs, opportunities and legal implications. And this project programme for the outline business case has been developed and is to be proposed in May 2021. Following on to the Ring and Ride update, from the 1st of August 2019, the Ring and Ride service had been operated by West Midlands Accessible Transport, and within the past 12 months, going on to January 2020, there's been a reduction of a percentage of 6.99% in the number of trips across Sandwell, with a total of 90,252 trips taken, and this is against a West Midlands-wide decline of 12.02%. West Midlands Accessible Transport are now required to put their drivers through additional training. This is resulting in a larger than desirable number of booking refusals due to lower driver availability. Going forward from this, Transport for West Midlands will be working hard with the new operator to ensure the Ring and Ride services continue to work for local people and wherever possible are improved based on customer feedback, embracing the
Can I perhaps ask you to bring out the salient points, because I'm hoping everyone's actually read the report. You don't need to read it out to us.
Thank you. Going on to the rail investment and partnerships, further changes are planned for the May 2020 timetable, from which point West Midlands Transport will be offering customers a service that they can have more confidence in. And going on to the HS2 connectivity package, sprint work has been progressing on the A34 and A45, with work being undertaken by the Transport for West Midlands and local authorities. During this period, the following activity has been undertaken, which is further engagement on the revised designs for the A34 routes following consultation. The final business cases for the A34 and A45 schemes have been developed and approved by the West Midlands Combined Authority Board on the 14th of February 2020, and the detailed design work has been completed and early contractor involvement has commenced. In regards to railway, as you're aware that we've got a few new number of rail investment projects from the West Midlands Rural Executive and the Transport for West Midlands. So a joint project team has been created to help the delivery of the investment projects. The current projects out underway are Willen Hall and Darlaston, and they're soon to be delivered in 2021 and 2022. Campbell Line new stations, which is consisting of Moseley, Kingsheath and Hazelwell, that's in 2021 and 2022. We've got the Dudley Port Station, which is the further development work commissioned jointly by the Transport for West Midlands, Sandwell MBC and Dudley MBC, following the initial outline proposals to improve the interchange facilities. And going on to the Metro programme and outline phases, work continues to progress the all extension projects being undertaken by the Midlands Metro Alliance. So during the period, the following activity has been undertaken. So with the Wensbury to Briley Hill Metro extension, detailed design of this extension started in December, and the construction phasing of the project is currently being reviewed. Utility works will start in February in Dudley Town Centre to clear the route for the construction, and a number of engagement events have been organised to inform the local communities of the work.
I need to ask you to wind up, please.
Sorry. In regards to managing short trips infrastructure, a scheme has been put in place to deliver cycleway improvements to Canal Telford in the Black Country. These improvements have been designed to create cycle-friendly corridors between existing cycle routes. So you've got this includes basically the Birmingham New Main Line in Sandwell, Dudley and Wolverhampton. So it's now possible to cycle from Wolverhampton to Birmingham through to Dudley and Sandwell on a continuous traffic-free cycle route. And we'll also come out with a new scheme, which is the West Midlands Bike Share. It's commenced the re-procurement of a new bike scheme with a minimum of 1,500 bikes across the 7 local authorities to be campaigned and trialled. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any questions to Councillor Akhtar? Councillor Boston?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Would Councillor Akhtar agree with me, the Tory West Midlands Mayor refusing to stand up to the private rail companies that are hiking up prices, having overcrowded trains here in Sandwell on a regular basis, is an absolute disgrace, and this is whilst Sandwell continues to receive substandard buses, while his preferred areas get far better?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, Councillor Boston, I agree the Mayor is failing to recognise the young people of our communities. Thank you.
Councillor Davies? Yvonne?
So it's more of a comment really, and maybe a question, but it seems to me that there's an awful lot going on in transport. Could you tell the room whether the transport is interesting from a female perspective? Because generally it's seen as a male occupation.
I think being the first female councillor on there, and obviously being my first year on there, it is quite an interest. At first you might find it boring because you've not had the insight, but once you've been there, you've seen a few meetings and stuff, it gives you good insight actually going into further aspects of air quality and congestion and looking at more of the trafficking and all these rail investments and partnerships that are happening. It gives you a great insight. So yeah, I find it very interesting. Thank you.
Councillor Steve Jones?
Thank you, Mayor. This is more of a question for the whole of the council, really. I think looking at the old transport policy, the young sunk hero of the West Midlands Transport is the Midland Metro. It stitched the Black Country to stitch the communities together to the economic powerhouse, which is Birmingham. I was just wondering that there's very much welcome investments in Teenage Square, bringing the entertainment districts together, key attractions, and this is a safe and this is quite cheap form of transport. And we're just asking the council really to request and try and persuade West Midland Metro to operate a 24-hour metro service, and that would be in celebration of Commonwealth Games. We're welcoming people from all over the world soon, and it would be great to actually give them a 24-hour service to an international city. It would only take a few extra trams, probably from 2 till 4 o'clock in the morning, just to actually do that, but it would be a great and safe way to travel from the entertainment districts in Birmingham to around the Black Country.
Thank you. I will get back to you with that. Thank you very much.
Councillor Ian Jones?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think it was about September that I asked a question about the Tipton railway station and the car park and the petition and the planning permission, which is going to run out any time now, and the investment that was promised by Transport for West Midlands and the Combined Authority. And I did have a response, thank you for that. I'd like to correct the Transport for West Midlands' assertion that the car parks in Tipton have been restricted by this council to 2 hours only. We do not own any car parks around the Tipton station. They are privately owned, and the restriction has been placed on by the owners of the shopping centre. But it would seem that the investment that has been promised, and surprise, surprise, some of the reasoning is that we have mine shafts in the Black Country, which seems to be the reason why the costs are spiralling to £2.5 million for a car park. If you can ask the officers to actually correct that and basically get the finger out and get something done in Tipton so that we can have the rail service and the car park that we sadly need. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Steve Melia.
Thank you, Chair. On page 181, you'll find reference to Sprint that's going through eventually from Birmingham to Walsall. And the route of Sprint is through my ward. And to date, I've received nothing whatsoever from whoever's responsible for Sprint that they're doing anything there. They are not notifying the members along the line of the route of Sprint. Can we have some details, please?
Thank you. Firstly, Councillor Ian Jones, I'll get back to you on that point as well. Councillor Amelia, yes, I will take that forward and see as in what Transport for West Midlands have to say in regards to Sprint and having no consultation in regards to your area. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, we note the report. Moving on now to the West Midlands report from Council's lead representative on the West Midlands Police and Crime Panel. We're on page 192. I'd like to invite the leader to start and then ask Councillor Richard Jones to present the update.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to make it clear to the members here and the people at home that due to diary commitments, I am not able to attend this meeting, and thankfully Councillor Jones has stepped in the breach and is doing a sterling service in making sure that this council is kept abreast of the developments of the West Midlands Police and Crime Panel. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jones.
Thank you for the kind words. Madam Mayor, I present to the Council the Police and Crime Panel Update Report. One of the statutory duties of the panel is to scrutinise and agree the proposed Police and Crime Commissioner's precept and budget for the forthcoming year. The PCC's budget, like the budget of this Council, is ultimately determined by the amount that a Conservative government deems we should have. The panel took the difficult decision to support the budget of the PCC, which is shown again to be underfunded from the Tory government, and that an additional 9.9 million shortfall is needed. The panel is unsure where this saving at the moment will come from or be found, but was assured that it could be found by the PCC. The only blame for an underfunded police service is that of the past and current Conservative government. Members will be aware of the consistent cuts to public spending by a Tory government since 2010. We are all aware of the reduction in police officers on the street nationally from 21,000, and this has had a negative effect on crime locally. The promised extra 20,000 police officers will not come soon enough, and I worry that it will not have the effect on crime we need to see. Last year, here, we saw an increase of 27% in violent knife crime. Members are aware that this is due to the past 10 years of Tory austerity on the policing budget. As part of the panel's work programme, we asked the Police and Crime Commissioner about the work they are doing to combat knife and violent crime. The panel also identified that a lack of long-term funding plan for the police from the government was an issue. Our new local Tory MP needs to be reminded about the consistent underfunding by his Conservative government and how this has had a detrimental effect on old and dilapidated, not fit for purpose police stations. If the police service were properly funded, we would still see our local police stations open. However, at the moment, some are not up to standard, and the PCC has to make some difficult decisions. Members were briefed on the effects of policing by unreliable funding. With no long-term commitment to improve funding to the police by a Conservative government, the Police and Crime Commissioner will need to look at continued and further efficiencies. I ask the Council to note this report. I'm happy to answer any questions about the activities of the panel over the past year.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Thank you. We'll receive that report.
Thank you very much.
Moving on to 12D, report from the Council's Lead representative on the West Midlands Combined Authority. Leader, do you want to present the report?
Thank you.
The update?
I hope that people will take the time to read this report, because I think it does give an overview of a number of issues and further information about the West Midlands Combined Authority, including many key projects and initiatives, and it is available on the West Midlands Combined Authority website. I would urge everyone in Sandwell who is interested in building for the future to make sure that they avail themselves of the developments. What I would say, and as a leader of this council, I try and avoid making political statements because I feel ultimately we are all responsible to make our communities a better place, irrespective of political colour. But I have to say that the Mayor of the Combined Authority is presenting himself as being the person who is delivering these projects in Sandwell. And the Mayor is not the person who is delivering these projects in Sandwell. It is the officers and the members of Sandwell working in cooperation with the 7 other metropolitan authorities and the non-constituent authorities to make sure that we cooperate, collaborate and get greater return for our investment. The Combined Authority is a figure of speech. It actually is a combination of all those authorities, its members and its officers working together. And I really wish that the West Midlands Mayor would better remember, without the cooperation on the ground of all political colours and persuasions, we would not be delivering the success we're delivering. And I would like to see equal thanks going to all parties and not the individual who happens to be a figurehead. I would urge you to read the report and I'll take any questions.
I'm hoping everyone has already read the report. Are there any questions to the leader? Okay, the decision recommendation is that Council consider opportunities for the borough arising from the West Midlands Combined Authority. We note that recommendation. Moving on to item 13. To receive the Scrutiny Board update, can I invite Councillor Singh to present the report from the Scrutiny Board's update?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I assure you I'll keep it short and sweet.
Nice and concise.
I would like to present this Scrutiny Update report, which includes a wide range of topics considered at the scrutiny meeting since October 2019, which includes the provisional budget for 2021 to 22-23, the town deal and inclusive economic deal. I would also like to tell you a little bit more about the Youth Facility Review, which is undertaken by Children's Services and Education Scrutiny Committee. As a part of the review group, we have visited the youth facilities within Sandwell because we believe the youth facilities are a bit outdated. The last review we had was in 2011. And when it comes to youth services or children's services, the things get outdated sooner as compared to other services. So as a part of this review, we're going around meeting youth of Sandwell, meeting parents of disabled children and other stakeholders like the police dealing with youth offenders or youth crime. So we are getting feedback from them like what is needed in the Sandwell, whether our facilities are up to date and what's missing, what are we good at. So we are in our evidence gathering phase. So once we're done with that, the report will be presented to the Scrutiny Board on the 30th of March, and after that it will be presented to the Cabinet in mid of April. I would like to move this report forward and I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions on the Scrutiny Boards too? Councillor Singh. Yeah, Councillor Giles.
Hello, Madam Mayor. It's not questions, it's just a couple of comments. On the one, I want to give you an update on the recommissioning of the gynecology service in Sandwell. It is staying in Sandwell, it is not going anywhere else. And also I'd like to just pass a message of thanks on to Darren Carter and his team for his hard work from Councillor Giles.
Thank you very much. I'm greatly relieved I used to work for them. Are there any other questions or comments? Thank you. Receive that report.
Thank you.
Moving on to item 14, appointment of independent person pursuant to the Localism Act 2011. the recommendation is that I'm going to invite Councillor Ahmed. Do you want to introduce the report?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Under the Localism Act 2011, the Council must appoint at least one independent person whose view must be sought and taken into account by the Council at specific stages when dealing with complaints against elected members. The Council has previously decided to have up to 3 independent persons. There are currently 2 vacancies. The Ethical Standard and Member Development Committee oversaw a recruitment exercise to fill the independent persons' vacancies. The positions were advertised openly for several weeks, resulting in one candidate being interviewed by member panel on 28th of February 2020. The interview panel unanimously determined the candidate Richard Phillip was suitable for the role of independent person and recommended his appointment to the Council. This recommendation was endorsed by Ethical Standard and Member Development Committee at its meeting held on 6th of March 2020. Mr. Phillip is a solicitor at Wolverhampton Council and has over 7 years' experience advising at senior level. He has supported Wolverhampton Council's monitoring officer on ethical standards matters and has a wide range of local government experience. As a solicitor in local government, he has considerable local government experience and many transferable skills which the panel felt made him suitable for the role of independent person. I therefore move that Council appoints Mr. Richard Phillips as one of independent persons pursuant to the Localism Act 2011 for a 4-year period ending 10th March 2024. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that seconded? Thank you, Councillor Dowling. Any questions or comments? Councillor Troe.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a question about the number of applications that were received. Do we have any idea of that? I know there were 2 posts that were advertised. They were advertised over several weeks. 1 candidate interviewed. Can you just could you councillors or Ahmed?
Just need to correct it. Apparently, only 1 post was advertised.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry, 1 candidate.
There was only one application. My question wasn't. I thought there were 2 posts. The council had agreed 3 posts in total.
Chair, can I answer?
Yes.
And so my question really was: is it intended to re-advertise?
Chair, thank you for that. Thank you, Councillor Chope. Yes, there are 2 vacancies, and originally it was supposed to be 3. We're looking for. We already had 1. We appointed Mr. Richard Phillips, and we advertised for 2 vacancies, and we only had 1 applicant. And hopefully, in future, we're still looking for recruit another person if possible, and probably might go for advertisement again.
Thank you. Thanks for that. Any other questions or comments? Right, is everyone in agreement? Anyone against? Any abstentions? Thank you very much. That's carried. Sincerely hope Mr. Phillips will accept the post. I think we need to, it's useful to remind you that this is an unpaid post. You will get expenses. Councillor Mealy, you want a quick comment?
Now that particular business has been finalised, I believe, can I make a comment on a previous holder of that position, Mr. John Claudia? He recently died, funeral last week, and he was for many, many years one of the chief surgeons at Sandwell District Hospital.
Yes.
I think it would be very remiss of us not to note the service that he also gave to this borough council as well as the borough as a whole, Mr. John Claudia.
Yes, I remember him. Thank you very much for reminding us. That's very nice. And moving on. Item 15, appointments to other bodies. Decision that the council considers nominations to 2 posts. Councillor Allen.
Yeah, thank you.
We're going to present the nominations.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. this regards the sort of periodic changes or need to change or appointments to new outside bodies for members. There's two identified in Appendix A. There's a slight change to one of them in that number 1, that the consideration of the nomination for the Margaret Westwood Memorial Charity be deferred until a future meeting. And the second one, that the Cabinet Member for Inclusive Economic Growth, Councillor Ali, be nominated to the Black Country LEP Place-Making Advisory Board for the remainder of the municipal year. And thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Is that seconded? Okay. Right, so we'll revisit the matter of Margaret Westwood Memorial Charity next month. Is everyone in agreement? Anyone against? Abstentions? That's noted. That's carried. Moving on to minutes of Cabinet, 8th of January, 22nd of January, 5th of February, 19th of February and 26th of February. Does anyone have... sorry, Leader, would you like to introduce the minutes?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm not intending to go through them page by page.
Thank you.
I thought you might be relieved. I'm assuming people will have read them, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions on the minutes of the 5 Cabinet meetings? So receive those minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Moving on, item 17, minutes of Ethical Standards Committee, 7th of February. Yes.
On page 225, aren't there 2 recommendations to put to council?
Resolved to recommend to Council that no changes are made to the local council tax reduction scheme 2020 and 2021, and that the local council tax reduction scheme for 2020 and 21 be approved. It does seem that we have overlooked this. Are you happy to move that?
I am reliably informed that we did it at the last council meeting.
You want to defer that? It's been done. This has already been approved. Ah, right. What at the last meeting? Right. So, have we made that decision?
Those areas relate to Cabinet meeting 8th of January. So the subsequent council meeting dealt with the recommendation.
Yes, we had a council meeting after
Page
that. Yes,
13.
We did. We've had, it was what, 14th of January? It was whenever the last council meeting was. We have actually agreed it. So, no, we've already agreed it. Don't know why it's set out like that here. Oh, yes, it is, because it was the 8th of January. So maybe it shouldn't have been here anyway.
We're on the same page now.
Yes, we're on the same page. Thank you very much. Any other comments?
It shouldn't be there.
Thank you very much. Moving on. Minutes of Ethical Standards and Member Development Committee, item 17. Councillor Ahmed, do you want to present those minutes?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move the minutes of the Ethical Standards and Member Development Committee of 7th of February 2020, and I'll take any questions. Thank you.
Are there any questions? Thank you very much. Received that report. And finally, agenda item 18, to consider the following notice of motion received under Standing Order number 7. Proposer is Councillor Ali. Do you want, The motion is as presented to you on the agenda, item 18. Councillor Ali, do you want to
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Do you want to propose?
As quick as possible, sir. In the last few
Do
years...
you want to propose it first?
I'll propose a motion.
Is there a seconder? Thank you. Carry on.
Okay, thank you. In the last few years, public concern about the threat to people's daily lives from climate change has risen considerably. This has been witnessed by school climate strikes, as spearheaded by Greta Thunberg, the Extension Rebellion protests in London, and of course the number of flood events which are becoming more frequent. Climate scientists have been warning us about the potential effects of a warming planet for decades. But as more extreme weather events are taking place, people are seeing for themselves how devastating the effects of climate change can be. The effects in Sandwell of climate change are already being felt, particularly upon the health of our residents. Typically, people on low incomes are thought to be disproportionately affected by climate change. For example, the high temperatures and poor air quality, which can exacerbate existing respiratory conditions, surface water flooding leading to flooding in people's homes and affecting roads and pathways. Lower income families are also adversely impacted by increases of the cost of food and energy, both of which are genuine threats in a climate emergency. It isn't just about our residents it isn't just our residents that will be impacted by climate change, but many of our businesses who have chosen to base themselves in Sandwell. Many are manufacturers who rely upon existing economic models to operate, such as accessing raw materials from which to produce goods, but who also need to find new ways of operating. The future of our economy needs to be a low carbon, and if our businesses do not adapt, they face the real prospects of being left behind, as other enterprises embrace new sustainable and green technologies. Since January of this year, we have been consulting with our residents and businesses about the threats from climate change and asking for their opinions on how we respond. Most responses so far have indicated that dealing with climate change and poor air quality should be priorities for the Council. The consultation period finishes soon, and we will then use the results to develop a new climate change strategy, which will also be establishing a steering group made up of members, officers and representations from local businesses and other organisations to help drive our ambition to become carbon neutral by 2041. In recognition of the need for us to show leadership in tackling climate change, we will also set a further target of 2030 for our buildings to become carbon neutral. We also need to think about our economy and what we can do to promote a circular economy, one in which waste is seen as a resource to be used for future production and which relies upon renewable sources of energy. Tackling climate change can offer Sandwell a host of opportunities, which will help us to deliver our 2030 vision. As we look towards new green technologies, we have the chance to host many of these enterprises here in Sandwell and to train our workforce with the necessary skills to build these new businesses. We have the opportunity today to demonstrate to residents, businesses and communities in Sandwell that we recognise the importance of dealing with climate change, but doing so also offers many opportunities to the borough to prosper. Therefore, Madam Mayor, I am proposing the following motion. This Council recognises the pressing urgency of tackling climate change. The consequences of global temperatures rising above 1.5 Celsius are so severe that preventing this from happening must be humanity's #1 priority. Climate change requires urgent actions at all levels of government and who have a duty to limit the negative impacts of environmental change. Towns and cities are uniquely placed to lead society in reducing carbon emissions. Sandwell Council's draft climate change strategy commits the Council to achieving carbon neutrality across the borough by 2041, with the Council achieving this target for its own buildings by no later than 2030. This Council declares a climate emergency. In making this declaration, we commit to ensuring that climate change is a priority focus for the Council, working collectively with our partners and citizens towards achievement of carbon zero global goal through the implementation, appropriate resource and monitoring process of the Council's climate change strategy. Thank you very much.
Councillor Sheen, did you want to say? Are there any comments from Councillor Piper?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I welcome the opportunity to endorse this resolution. Actually, I think it's one of the things that I feel is the most important developments that we're going to have to deal with over the next couple of decades, and it's There's quite a bit actually that has been done. I wrote to the previous chief executive about what was happening in terms of an energy strategy for the borough. And there are things that have been done. The switch to LED lighting and street lighting, and switching office lighting to LED lighting is quite good. I think there's stuff been done in housing in terms of energy conservation in local authority owned properties. As I understand it, there are plans to move towards either hybrid or electric vehicles in the council's fleet. So I think that there are things that can be done, and I think there are a lot more that can be done. I think we've heard today in the Sandwell plan and in the inclusive economy deal that there are steps in there that can be taken, both as a local authority in terms of what we do in terms of our own energy conservation, but also working with industry to see if there are ways in which we can get industry in Sandwell on board in terms of recognising the need to do something about climate change. We're not going to be able to resolve the issues of climate change in Sandwell. It's as Councillor Ali's pointed out, it's a global issue, never mind a national issue. And when we've got a Prime Minister who can't even be asked to turn up for pardon me, can't even be bothered to turn up for a debate on climate change during the general election, then it is important that local authorities do take some sort of leads on this. I think there are something like 70% plus of local authorities now have signed up to the climate emergency, and I'm pleased to see Sandwell doing the same. Even if it was only for enlightened self-interest, it would be useful. There's a Survation poll out this week that shows 84% of people think there should be more done to deal with the horrific effects of climate change, just with stuff we've seen recently in terms of flooding. So I'm pleased to be able to endorse this.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? I think I really would like to add my... I'll put the timer on myself. But I won't be speaking that long. Okay. When I first came onto the council, this was the area I particularly wanted to be a part of, and indeed was. I was privileged to be around when we changed to increased recycling, and we were doing very well compared to other boroughs, nowhere near enough. I agree that this is the most pressing challenge for humanity. We've certainly missed an awful lot of targets. We are certainly running out of time. Year on year, records are being slashed in terms of rainfall, too much, too little, in the wrong place, fires, air quality, climate. The earth has lost the capacity to compensate. We've got a little bit of time left, but I really don't think it's very much, and certainly we can't wait for technology to take over. In 2 decades' time, we won't be here. I think the matter is absolutely urgent. Councillor Jones.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I know that I've spoken already this evening, but I'm really passionate about this. It's not just me, and it's not just everyone in this building. It's our young people that are affected by this decision today. And an inspirational young person that has got people talking about this is Greta Thunberg, and she said, I want you to act as you would in a crisis. I want you to act as if our house is on fire, because it is.
Thank you very much. Any further comments? Councillor Boston.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I concur with all colleagues who have spoken. My question to Councillor Ali is regarding the government and whether he has any plans on writing to the government, as he did a few months ago, to really call upon them to provide the resources that we need in order to address best these challenges. I know they're climate change hypocrites. While giving all the rhetoric, their manifesto has been written by the biggest polluters in the country. But would that be something that Councillor Ali would be doing moving forward?
Thank you, Councillor Boston. Myself and Darren Carter, Executive Director for Resources, have the great pleasure of always writing to the local MPs on the finance matters, so no doubt we'll be writing to them about climate change stuff.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions? I'm sure Cabinet will note. So all those in favour of the motion say aye. Aye. Anyone against? That appears to be unanimous. We all want to take our part. I hope Cabinet and senior officers will start putting together detailed ways of doing this. Finally, can I just say that on Friday here in the Chamber we have events all day marking the end of International Women's Day / Week. So welcome everyone to come along for at least part of those celebrations. I think there's way to go, but significant improvements have been made. And with that, thank you very much. I'm closing the meeting.